There are many fragments of silicon, but this one is mine.
Welcome to the season finale of season 10 of Fragments of Silicon. Yeah, it's been a long season, literally. But here we are, before we go off on break for 2 weeks, 2-ish weeks, or it's like, it's kind of hard to measure because, our first show back will be reviews. Just, but anyway, let's go to the news from the regular crew. Petty, you go first because you've got more doctors.
Yep. I'm going to go see the orthopedic surgeon on April 10th because I had an MRI and my knee's jacked up. There is apparently a lot of swelling, and there's like a 6 millimeter part where I have basically no cartilage.
Ouch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ouch is what happens every time I walk on it. So that's gonna be fun. Hopefully they actually decide to do something and not, just be like, oh, just do physical therapy.
No. You don't seem fairly hopeful because, well, all of the other problems you've had with this doctor.
Yeah, this is the same doctor who wouldn't understand the fact that I couldn't afford physical therapy in the first place. So, this is gonna be fun. Hopefully it gets worked out, and hopefully it's, I'm not laid up for upwards of potentially 2 months.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Clearly, we should just attach your brain to a robot spider.
I mean, please? Then I'd be without these accursed legs, and that'd be a blessing from the heavens.
Okay. Before this gets any more dark.
As far as gaming stuff, not a whole lot to report this week, but at the end of the show we're going to be talking about plans for our break, because I'm going to be doing some live streaming because I'm going to have the house to myself next week. Hooray for vacations where you have to house sit.
All right. Alex, over to you.
It's definitely been warming up around here, although it's been a little bit, still a little bit brisk the last few days. Nothing super eventful on work or anything like that. There was a major update to Dragon March for Death this week, or actually just today. So I've been trying some of the new downloadable missions and some of the other stuff. That's been interesting. And not really a whole lot else.
All right.
Sorry, I guess I'm boring this week. I mean, more than usual.
Anyway, Twilight, you're up.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely gotten much warmer around here, though the mornings have been chilly. But yeah, most of the day has been warm. We're continuing to do some yard work. We've been repainting some of the metal outdoor furniture, and still trying to resolve the old picnic table issue. Besides that, in terms of gaming, with Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2's announcement, I've been trying to finish up the original. Since I've been started playing it a while back and haven't finished it. Besides that, that'll be it.
All right, I guess it's my go.
Mm-hmm.
All right then. Well, first up, my nephew has been born. I think I might have mentioned that a couple months ago. My brother was out here right before he was slated to be born, but he's doing healthy. He's named Henry. Probably the last niece or nephew I'm going to have. At least I hope that's the case. Given you know my my brother already has 3 kids. And this one this one took a toll on my sister-in-law. So still, much closer to home. Well, I got a new cable modem because
Hooray.
it's like the old one finally gave out.
Yeah, they do that.
Well, it's like the thing is, this is more. The wire was attached too tightly to the cable modem, so the actual coaxial was loose.
Ooh, yeah, and that's not a fun repair.
Well, here's the thing. Since it's the cable companies, all I had to do was go down to the service center and switch out modems.
Ah, you go with the lease route?
Yes.
Mm.
It has its advantages in that I don't have to replace the modem. It's like the cable modem is theirs, the Wi-Fi modem is mine. So that means the signal's been a lot more stable than it used to be.
I'd imagine.
Thank God, because that was getting annoying. As far as gaming news, I'm just enjoying the fact that the games I'm playing right now aren't games I have to review. Even though... so that's nice.
Yeah, I picked up a bunch of new games recently. Hopefully over break I'll get a chance to try some of them.
I mean, mind you, some of the games we got for review, I'm getting emails about it. I'm like, have you reviewed this yet? I'm like, no, we're going on break. I have to keep explaining this. It's like, no, like I told you this before. It's once again, it's kind of annoying.
Especially the ones who we were reviewing right after we come off break.
Yeah, it's the first reviews we got slated for next season. Now, it's like that's as close as I could get them.
Mm-hmm.
We're still taking our break. Anyway, so that'll about do it for the news this week. So, merrily, we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week are Josh Kaplan and Minutes of Studio Elan.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. How are you two doing today?
I'm doing really well. Actually packing up, moving cross country here in a couple days. So this is my second to last night on the East Coast. But other than that, doing pretty well. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Right. So getting started, we like to talk to the people behind the studio, behind the game, and usually it's how they got into video gaming. I guess in this case, more specifically, how did you get into visual novels?
So this is probably going to be a kind of a common answer for people you ask about that. But back in 2012, there was a visual novel that was released called Katawa Shoujo. And that was my introduction, not just to visual novels, but to anime stuff in general.
Oh, that's pretty recent.
Yeah. Only I was like in my senior year of high school then. So definitely a lot later than a lot of other people.
Right. And your Minute here?
For me, I got into visual novels with the Phoenix Wright series. So in my freshman year of high school, I just started playing through all the games and kind of fell in love. And then, just like Josh, after I played Katawa Shoujo, I wanted to make my own too.
And what was the first visual, like, how do I frame this? Because, like, did you do amateur visual novel stuff before Studio Elan, or like, is this endeavor your first, like, real crack at doing visual novels?
So for me at least, I was part of multiple kind of indie amateur teams that did not exactly end well. Some of us never even really got off the ground, and that sort of began right around the time of KS's release back in 2012. So it's been a few years of just like little hobby projects that maybe don't get finished for this or that reason, but this was our first release as Studio Elan, and for me personally it was my second commercial release after Highway Blossoms.
Yeah, we have the same story there. So I think we met around 2012 after the release, and we joined the same project, but it never got off the ground. And for me, Heart of the Woods is my first commercial release.
So relative newcomers to the scene, as it were. Like, makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So Studio Elan itself, for those who don't know, they're not just makers of visual novels. They are makers of a certain kind of visual novel. And that is Yuri kinetic visual novels, if I'm getting that correctly. And my question here is, what made you go in this direction? What made you want to create this particular brand of visual novel?
So there's a couple of reasons. Obviously, one of those is going to be kind of that Yuri as a genre is a little bit underrepresented compared to some of the other genres. So compared to yaoi games or otome games or even bishoujo games, there's just not quite as many Yuri games out there. So it was kind of a niche that we thought we could fill. But then for me personally, when I did Highway Blossoms a couple years ago, we weren't. It wasn't with any particular plans of establishing a reputation for making Yuri games, so to speak. It was just kind of like, oh, we're going to make a game, and it happens to be a Yuri visual novel. But then we had such a positive reception to that, and there were so many people who were like, I really enjoyed this. I want more stories like this, that kind of led to me founding Studio Elan later that same year, to kind of deliver more games in that similar vein of like that particular kind of Yuri VN, I guess.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, we deal with visual novels quite often on this program. And yeah, like pure Yuri, I won't say it's the rarest, but it's not the most common either. And
For sure.
Especially if we're talking like Western studios,
Right.
It's like Japan is a bit different. Like there are entire series, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I suppose before we talk about like the main two, we should also cover the waters above. Like, I'm not exactly sure if this comes before Highway Blossoms and Heart of the Woods or after.
Okay, so that title is still technically in development. We released The Waters Above Prelude back in June of last year, and it's a prequel to what the full game will be. It's basically a demo, but it's kind of not a demo in that it's 4 short stories, one centered around each of the 4 main characters, and they're not stories that will appear in the actual game, but rather they're more to serve as an introduction to the characters and to the universe. So that the full game is still in development, and we're hoping to have that out maybe sometime this year or so. But that's also development on that one didn't start until after development on Heart of the Woods had already begun.
Okay. So we'll come back to that then.
Sure.
Then we like to do these in chronological order.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But anyway, so that brings us to Highway Blossoms. And so where did the first kernel of the idea behind this game come from?
So that game was made by. Originally, it was done under a different development team that I was part of called Alienworks. In particular, that game was a project between myself as well as my friend Scion, who is the founder of Studio Coattails. And so we had the idea to make what was originally supposed to be a very short game, just to kind of gain some experience with making something. Because as I said, that was the first game that we had released, like that actually got finished. And so we wanted to start off small, kind of test the waters and see, just kind of what the development process was like from start to finish. And so the very first idea was just we have two girls on a road trip, and that was Scion's premise that he came to me with, and then we wanted something to add to it. So I was like, okay, how about a treasure hunt? And we just kind of took those two ideas, two girls on a road trip on a treasure hunt, and we kind of grew off from there with what we could come up with, and that eventually became Highway Blossoms.
Sounds like a good starting point. I suppose my next question is the location where these two girls are doing their road trip. For those who haven't played the game, they're doing it through the American Southwest, in particular New Mexico and Arizona. My question is, how familiar were you or the development team with that area?
Decently familiar. So Scion is actually from Southern California. At the very spoilers for Highway Blossoms, I guess. At the very end of the story, like the part of California where they end up, that's really close to where he's from, and so he knows that area super well. And conversely, I lived in Arizona and Colorado for most of my life, so I was pretty familiar with that area as well. We've been to almost all of the locations that the girls travel to. I also lived in Las Vegas for a while. We've both been to Moab. We haven't been to Shiprock, which is the first place that they go to.
Right.
But we have been to a lot of them. We tried to keep it as authentic as we could. In terms of small details and even some of the stuff like the signs that you pass along the highway, like we tried to keep that accurate.
Well, that's good. I mean, like, have people who live in the American Southwest commented on those small little details and such?
A little bit, yeah. There's one in particular. There's one detail that I really remember, which is where the girls stop at a gas station near a town called Chinley, where they're going to this place called Canyon de Chelly. And while they're in the gas station, the main character Amber notices a brochure for an attraction that's just called The Thing. And I don't know if you've ever driven through like the Arizona highway, but on the way, like on the road between Phoenix and Tucson, Arizona, there will be billboards literally not even every mile, more like every couple hundred feet or so, advertising The Thing. And so we definitely got a couple comments about that. And then also some of the more popular locations like the Grand Canyon or Arches. A lot of people are like, oh, I've been there. It was really cool to see this in a game.
That's neat. Personally, last time I was out, God, in Arizona was a long time ago. And I don't think I did any of the drive-in, so... possible I saw that stuff, but I don't remember. Like,
I know that bizarre billboards and roadside attractions is a very large thing in a lot of places in the United States west of the Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I'm mostly like East Coast when it comes to that stuff, so couldn't personally verify it. Like,
Can confirm. I'm the farthest west on call.
Yeah, it's like the person who could isn't here currently. So, if Mac were here, he'd probably be talking a lot about this.
Yeah.
because he lives in Arizona.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Fine. So how long is Highway Blossoms as a visual novel? Like,
It's definitely on the shorter side. I think most people tend to complete it in something like 6 to 8 hours. It's just shy of about 100,000 words, and the metric that I always use is about 10,000 words per hour of reading. So, kind of adjust for your reading speed there. But yeah, it's definitely kind of short.
To quote from the Humble Bundle it's currently in, at least tens of words, maybe even hundreds.
Yes.
Although the last word count puts it around 90,000, so expect 6 or so hours of reading.
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, I suppose this is fortuitous timing because, if you want Highway Blossoms, you can get it in the Humble Hot Date bundle.
Oh yes.
Like, we'll have more details on that at the end of the interview.
Only $1.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I was playing this not too long ago, like about an hour ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Also, what made you go with kinetic visual novels? If you're familiar with that term.
Right. So for anyone who's not aware, a kinetic visual novel is a VM that doesn't have any choices or interactivity. It's just kind of you read through the story and you don't really affect it. With Highway Blossoms, it was more just about keeping it simple, because for every branch that you add, every different ending or whatever, that's going to be extra writing, that's going to possibly need extra art assets. It kind of amplifies the amount of work that you need to do, and so like, okay, we're just going to make something straightforward, start to finish, really easy to get through. We're not specifically like, I wouldn't say we have a focus on kinetic novels. For instance, Heart of the Woods has a couple choices, but then The Waters Above is another kinetic novel. So it's more just about how best to tell the story, I guess. In some visual novels, you'll have different characters that you can romance, or there'll be multiple different outcomes of the story, of course. And some stories really lend themselves to that kind of interactivity. Whereas other stories, I think, work best as just a set beginning and a set ending.
I can definitely agree. Like, we actually, once again, we've covered a lot of visual novels, and some work better as kinetics. Some work with the choice and the routes and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so how many people worked on Highway Blossoms, and how did the collaboration process work?
Oh gosh, let's see. Maybe so the core staff was myself and Scion. We were like the two co-creators, and then also our programmer Kevin was involved pretty in depth with the game. But other than that, we had 3 or 4 musicians. We had 1 background artist. We had 3 artists who were doing the CG art, the event graphics. We had 2 people who worked on the sprite art. So it was, all in all, it was somewhere around a dozen people, and that's not even counting the voice actors.
Right. And how long did it take you to complete this endeavor?
We started in, I want to say it was early 2015. It could have been late 2014. I'm not super sure. And then we released in mid-June 2016. So somewhere around a year and a half.
That's not too bad for a visual novel project.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And how did you hook up with Sekai Project?
So Sekai Project at the time was still pretty new to the scene. Excuse me. They had just recently announced Clanad and Grisaya were like the kind of the active projects right then, but they had also announced that they were going to be publishing a couple Western-made visual novels like Back at the Spirit, or back at the time, Sakura Spirit, the Rising Angels series, and also Reject Demon Toko by Lupisoft. So at the time, they were pretty much the only publisher who was willing to touch Western-made visual novels, which kind of had a stigma against them at the time. So we actually just sent them an email through their contact form on their site. And we're like, hey, we have this game. This was actually for a different project, the Human Reignition Project, which started before Highway Blossoms. But we're like, hey, we have this game that we're doing. Would you guys be interested in publishing it? And it turns out that they were. And so everything kind of went from there.
Glad that worked out for you.
Yeah.
And so, moving ahead, this has actually been remastered.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what does that entail in terms of like a visual novel? Like, how has this game been remastered?
So there was a lot of stuff that we decided we wanted to add later on. The main one being English voice acting, but there were also a couple other things like CGs that we had to cut because we didn't have the budget for it, or there was one song that wasn't finished in time for the initial release, but that made it into the soundtrack for the remastered version. So it was basically just going through and polishing the existing game. It doesn't change the story at all, but it just kind of makes the presentation better.
I see. So is the remastered version like the version you wanted to release all along then?
A little bit, yeah. We honestly during development, we were like, oh, it would be cool to do voice acting, but we didn't ever. It never seemed feasible. It wasn't something that we ever thought might happen. So it was more like we had these opportunities come up after the fact, and we decided to take advantage of them.
And how did voice recording and voice acting go for you?
So we were approached by John Wesley Go of Yin Yang Voices. He sent us a message one day and was just like, hey, I have this casting and voice acting group. Would you be interested in adding voice acting to Highway Blossoms? And we were like, yes, we would. And it went from there. So they helped us do like casting, like actually finding the actors and auditioning. And then they were also on call to help direct the actors during the recording processes. It wasn't in-person recording or anything like that. We were never in a studio with the voice actors. It was all just done via Skype and Discord and stuff. But yeah.
Which is fairly standard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd be more surprised if you had like a professional booth and,
Some of the actors actually do at their home studios. For instance, the voice actress for Marina, Jill Harris, she does like anime dubbing for Funimation. So she's in shows like Black Clover, as well as like she was the voice of Yumimi in the Planetarian anime. So she's like, a lot of these actors have pretty professional setups.
Makes sense. Like if they're doing voice work for like Funimation, yeah. Anyway, well, with all that in mind, we should probably move forward to Heart of the Woods, which is your most recent release.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping in continuity with Highway Blossoms, how many people who worked on that continued over into, the Studio Elan structure here?
So from the Highway Blossoms team, I think the only people were myself and then also Rosuri, who was one of the CG artists for Highway Blossoms. She did the cover art as well as a couple of the other images in the game. But everyone else, I think, was totally new for me. Like, it was a brand new team otherwise.
And how many people comprise Studio Elan today?
Oh, gosh. So there's Minute and myself, of course. We have 2 musicians, a graphic designer, our PR manager, our merchandise designer, 3 other writers, And then we also have like a variety of contractors that we work with. So like the mostly the artists.
So it sounds like a much more professional production. Once again, makes sense given that now you've released stuff, you're releasing commercial works. Anyway, so with Heart of the Woods here, for the uninitiated, what is this visual novel about?
So Heart of the Woods is another Yuri VN. It's so in addition to the whole Yuri aspect, the other defining trait of Studio Elan games is the fantasy element. So all of our games have some sort of magic to them. And Heart of the Woods, of course, is no exception. The main story is about two best friends who run a paranormal investigation YouTube channel, and they get an invitation to this remote village, loosely in a place loosely based off of Germany, and they travel out there investigating rumors of like mysterious lights and a giant forest spirit that is reported by one of their fans. And they head out to check it out, and spoilers, they find it.
Well, it's like,
I mean, it'd be a very uninteresting visual novel if they didn't.
Yes, they travel out, they don't find anything, that's the end.
yeah, it would also be pretty short too.
The whole adventure was the friends we made along the way. Wait, we didn't make any shit.
I'm like, and unlike, well, the actual paranormal YouTube channels, and for that matter, television shows, they've actually found something.
Yes.
Oh, I remember, God, what was that sci-fi ghost hunter show called? Like, is it called the Ghost Hunters?
I think it's literally called Ghost Hunters.
Ghost Hunters,
Yeah.
There's a lot of ghost shows.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, it's like, sounds like it's something in that vein. Only, it's like there's actually a ghost here instead of whatever the fuck goes on. I never watched that because ghosts don't exist.
Wow, spoilers.
But what if they do, and they're just hiding from you specifically?
That would be incredibly specific.
That's a visual novel premise right there. Everyone can see ghosts except you.
Now, as I can we? I'm wondering if we can talk about this, but as I understand it, there's more varied representation in this visual novel. Like, there's like a trans girl.
Yes. So Tara, who is the main character's best friend, she's the one who's on screen during the YouTube show Paranormal. She is transgender, yes.
That's what I thought. And was there any specific push to include more varied characters, or is that just something that happened along the way?
No, there wasn't any push for it or anything like that. It was just kind of something that we felt was a good opportunity. Like we had this platform, and we thought, we should use this for positive representation. And it's something that was also really important to like certain members of our team as well. So, yeah.
I suppose that that gets to a question we haven't really talked about yet, but in terms of like writing, in terms of writing and other aspects of the production here, are there any gay people working on these visual novels?
Oh yeah, most of our team, the vast majority of Studio Elan are LGBT.
That's once again, that's always good because there's always there's the LGBT stuff that isn't made by LGBT people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows. Let's just say.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I think you mentioned a bit before that this one actually has choices. Like, now, what kind of choices do you make here? Without running into spoilers.
I'll let Minute go ahead and talk about that one a little bit, because she was also pretty involved with the narrative direction. She was not only our programmer, but she was also the lead editor for the game too. So I'll let her give some input here.
So the choices, there are 3 choices in total. 2 right around the middle of the game, and then 1 at the end. There are 3 endings that you can get to, and it's fairly obvious which one is the good one because it's a lot longer than the other ones.
Mhm.
The choices we really wanted to try and surprise the readers. It's kind of hard to go into it too much, but playing it, we hope that people will be pleasantly surprised on how they're handled.
Hmm. I suppose my question on the endings is: do you have to get all the endings in order to get the super special final ending?
No, you can get the good end on the first try. You don't
Okay.
have to see the bad ends if you want to get the ending.
Yeah, that another common convention of visual novels. You got to do all the paths, all the endings before you get the actual good ending. Just
Yeah, because
like,
some people don't like to see the bad ends, and our bad ends aren't happy at all. So
right. So, what has been the reaction to Heart of the Woods, especially versus Highway Blossoms?
It's been really positive, which is nice. I think, it kind of goes without saying, but anytime you make something, you want it to be better than the last thing you made. And so throughout development, I was often kind of worried, like, is this going to be better? Is this, do I even know what I'm doing? I think pretty much everyone on the team probably went through several phases of imposter syndrome. But in the end, it's been super, super phenomenal feedback. We have an amazing active fan base on our Discord server and stuff. We have lots of people who have just been so appreciative, I guess. Which it's really nice to hear that the game matters to people, and that for every time someone's like, I really like this because I felt represented by this game, or this was one of the best things I've read, whatever. It's super validating, and we've been fortunate that there's been a good amount of that since the release.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I've seen that reaction from people on Twitter in regards to this game.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to have struck a positive chord with people, because once again, not just the Yuri element, but especially trans people.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking even more of a minority in terms of representation.
Right.
Also represented well.
Yeah,
yes.
for sure.
Yes, in both cases, but it's like, and so it's always good that there are things out there that have positive representation. Anyway, so was making Heart of the Woods harder than Highway Blossom? Was it about the same? Was it easier?
It's they both had their ups and downs, I think. So Heart of the Woods it's larger, not just in word count, but also in terms of how much stuff there is in it. So not only the additional endings and stuff, but also there's more art assets. There's more thought put into the composition of the music. Basically, a lot. I don't want to say a lot more planning, but a lot more planning. And so, in that regards, it was more of. I think it was a bit more difficult to assemble, kind of. Whereas Highway Blossoms, we didn't exactly know what we were doing, so we didn't we weren't aware of the issues we were facing, I guess. Whereas this time around, we knew what to watch out for, and we had more experience just in the development process, and we're able to plan ahead better. So it's kind of a 50-50. I think it was a natural progression of difficulty, so to speak, just kind of going along with the harder or the bigger scope.
Makes sense, given that there seems to be more ambition behind Heart of the Woods here.
Hmm.
Now, once again, how long is this one, especially in comparison to your first release?
So this one is So as mentioned, Highway Blossoms is about 90,000 words, and Heart of the Woods was 120 or 130,000, I think. I don't remember specifically. So it's a little bit longer. Not significantly. It's not twice the length or anything, but it is a bit bigger.
And I also see from your website this is your first R18 release, or 18
Yes.
plus. So, is that in terms of like content, or is that themes, or nudity, what have you?
Yeah, so there is an optional 18 plus patch which adds two sex scenes later on in the game, and they are very explicit, but they're also, like I said, they're totally optional. And yeah, that's our only current project that has that kind of content, though.
I see. And was the whole patch idea Sekai Project's idea or your idea?
No, it was something that we chose to do. Highway Blossoms is kind of similar, where it has an optional 18 plus DLC like that, where we felt like it could add to the story, but also we felt like we could still tell a good story that's accessible for all ages. So we wanted the separation to be clean. Like, we didn't want it to feel like we were censoring it, I guess, or like you were missing out on something if you weren't using the patch. But we also didn't want the additional content to be kind of frivolous and just like unnecessary fan service, I guess.
Okay. That's certainly a different reason than the usual one for these patches. Like, for those who don't know, that's usually because of, well, until more recently, Steam's content guidelines. Though now they semi-allow adult visual novels on their site.
Yeah.
It's a whole complicated process. We've had many conversations about it, let's just say.
I'm pretty sure if we got to do it again, John Pritchett would bust into the call.
Oh, no.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
It's like you think we're joking, but we're not.
No, this is a whole year-long saga there.
Oh, yeah.
But that's outside of the scope of this interview. But anyway, well, I suppose, where can they get the adult patch should they want to experience that content, and does it cost anything, or is it a free patch?
It is a free patch. So it's currently available on our itch.io, which is just vnstudiolon.itch.io. And then we've also, we need to update the one on our website. But other than that, you can kind of get it like if you ask on our Discord server or something like that. But yeah, it's totally free. And it'll eventually be Steam DLC, but I don't know when. It'll also be free on Steam, though.
Now, if you have the Steam version, can you still update that, or do you need to get it from another storefront to be able to update with the 18
No,
plus?
Patch, yeah, the patch works fine. Same patch works on any version of the game.
All right.
All right.
Sometimes that is a problem the way Steam
Right.
wrappers work.
Yeah, no, it's pretty simple in this case.
Oh, that's good. And I also see that there's a couple of soundtracks for Heart of the Woods on Steam. Like, is that all the music that, or will there be another soundtrack?
No, so that's the entire soundtrack. There were two composers for the game, Astrotus and Esselfordium. And so each soundtrack, like one half, Moonlight is Esselfordium's tracks, and Snowfall is Astrotus's. I think I might have gotten that backwards, but yeah, that's the entirety of the music, other than the ending theme.
I see. And is there any more DLC coming? Like, is there any additional content that hasn't already been created coming for Heart of the Woods, or is it outside of the adult patch? What you see is what you get on Steam right now.
There's nothing that we're actively working on. We've kind of talked about it. We get a lot of questions about voice acting again, especially since we kind of set the precedent with Highway Blossoms, and that's definitely something that we're interested in doing, but there's no current plans for it. And similarly, again, there's stuff that we had to take out, either just because of time or because of budget, that we'd like to maybe add back in at some point, but there's nothing. We're not secretly working on anything else right now. We do post some extra stuff on our Patreon that's technically canon content, I guess, but it's all after story sort of stuff, or like stuff from within the main story that we just chose not to include.
I see. So that means that maybe one day there will be a Heart of the Woods remaster.
It's definitely possible.
Okay. Anyway, so shifting back to your upcoming release, how far along is that currently?
So that one it's a little bit difficult. The artist for that game, Nami, she has been super busy. She did art for Type Moon's, Fate Grand Order game, and she just did a light novel in Japan. So she's been super busy with other stuff, and so we're a little bit behind on the art side, but we'll be getting back to that really soon. I'd say it's maybe somewhere around like half done overall, and we're hoping to have that out by the end of this year.
Well, I mean, hopefully that'll work out. It sounds a bit touch and go. I'll be honest, given your artist's work schedule there.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I'll see if my colleagues here have any more questions about any of your titles at this time.
Sure.
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think I hadn't really checked any of these out before, but they look nice, so I'll probably
thank
be
you.
trying them out.
Awesome. Hope you enjoy.
I don't have any questions myself, but I did read Highway Blossom back when it was first released, and I really enjoyed it. And,
Oh, thank you.
no problem. I hope to read A Heart of the Woods pretty soon.
Cool. Hope you like that one just as much.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it for this session. Hopefully we can have you back on the program when The Waters Above is close to release or out.
Sure.
It's like, so we can talk about it more. Like,
All right. We'd love to be back.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so the games are Highway Blossoms Remastered. It's currently one of the Humble Hot Date bundle that's going on right now at the time of recording. It is in the base tier, so if you want to pay just $1, you can get that and a couple other visual novels.
Yeah, let me actually put a link to that in the chat before I forget.
That would be a good idea. Like, I think that Humble bundle is running for 2 weeks.
At time
yes.
of recording,
12 days.
Yep, 12 days,
Because
15 hours.
Yeah, because it just went live a couple of days ago, and Humble bundles usually have about a 2-week span. So if you want to pick that up at a cheap price, or and there are other tiers, but I don't think any other Studio Elan titles. It's like Heart of the Woods isn't in that package.
It does actually. It includes a coupon to get 20% off of Heart of the Woods, but it's not included in the bundle. Like the full game isn't.
I see. Well, there's another. What tier is that?
I think it's a $10 tier. It includes a coupon for Heart of the Woods, and then also for the first episode of National Park Girls, which is actually another game that I was involved with that just came out a couple weeks ago. So I think that's $10 tier.
I think that's Sekai's latest release, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, second most recent. Tokyo Chronos came out after that, but otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that the regular price for Highway Blossoms is $12.99. And you can also get, if you want a DRM free version of either one of these, you can get them off of itch.io. And Heart of the Woods just came out. It's $14.99. And it's got about $10 worth of DLC currently. So be sure to pick those up today. Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. right, welcome to the topic of discussion. This week, we are actually going retro. Been a while since we've done that. But we are talking about the Sega Master System. Mainly inspired by Naka's recent trend of covering Master System games. Now, admittedly, the Master System I never played, I never owned, I never even had the power base converter. So it's a bit of gaming history that I never had real access to. To be fair, not a lot of people in North America did.
Yep.
You know, it's like...
If you want to talk about Sega flops, that was one of the biggest ones over in the West.
Yes. Like, when it comes to Sega nostalgia, it kind of begins and ends with the Sega Genesis, especially in North America. As I'm kind of hinting, it's not the case in other countries. But, none of us grew up in Europe or Brazil. So, we do not have the perspective of, our first console being the Master System.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that happened, that was more the exception rather than the rule. Or, somebody's grandmother got confused on systems. Like, and the sales reflect that in North America. Because the Master System was a distant third. To obviously the NES, but also the Atari 7800 was a thing. And Atari, still was kind of a name in the late 80s. Obviously not the literal household name that Nintendo was at that point, but it still had more brand recognition than fucking Sega in the late pre-Genesis.
Yeah.
It's like Sega. If people in North America knew about Sega, it might have probably been their arcade games, which were fairly popular. Afterburner, Super Hang-On, all of the Yu Suzuki classics of the 80s. But still.
And I guess kind of with a little bit of microcomputers, but since they didn't take off very well, that's still a pretty niche market.
Well, computers is a different different story. I'm talking about, where gaming really was in terms of North America. If we want to talk about microcomputers, that was the scene in Europe in the 80s.
Yeah, that's more I was going with, because, oh boy, that's a topic in and of itself.
Yes, it is. But, I mean, to boil it down, the people of Europe, they gamed mostly on machines like the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, the BBC Micro, the Amstrad CPC, and so on and so forth. And, they were used to buying cassette tapes that cost like £4. No joke. That's what their games usually cost. And that's a big reason why consoles didn't break through until, no joke, the early 90s. And the Master System was the first one to really do that. The Master System was released like in the late 80s in Europe, in Brazil, but it wasn't until budget versions of that showed up that, like specific to Europe, the Mastertronics Sega Master System 2.
Yep.
That is the one that seems to have mostly resonated, and it's also the reason why Alex Kidd is, no joke, a source of some serious nostalgia in Europe.
I guess for some reference, the Master System we usually recognize as the Master System is technically the Sega Mark III.
Yes. To deepen the story further, the Sega Mark III is like the last in the SG/SC line.
Yep.
Sega's actual first console is something called the SG-1000.
And good luck finding one of those.
Well, if you're not like, the SG-1000 was actually really popular in Taiwan, of all places.
Fair enough.
Kind of really carried the console there. Anyway, there's a lot of history with the Master System.
Mm-hmm.
in other parts of the world. We haven't even got to, like, Brazil. It's absolutely insane.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Brazil, the Master System and Genesis is still going strong there, and it's currently 2019.
Yeah. Well, that's because Brazil, like,
Because
Brazil,
who needs more than 8 bits?
well, it's more the way Brazil taxes consoles.
Mhm.
Okay, short story, Brazil has a huge import duty on most, especially modern consoles, that make them really stupidly expensive. I'm like, and I think that's been going on for decades. Not exactly sure, but one of the reasons why Master System and Genesis stuff is so cheap there is because it's actually handled by a local Brazilian company called Tectoy. You know, they and they did support for the Master System well beyond anyone's expectations or time frame. I'm talking about the original run, which lasted until about the late '90s, early 2000s. Like they were doing things like converting Mortal Kombat 2 to the system and Duke Nukem 3D to the Master.
At a certain point, one wonders how.
Magic is my guess.
It clearly runs on black magic. There's no other way.
I mean, it's like those are impressive. It's one of those are impressive that you got them running on the Master System. But I don't think I'd ever want to play fucking Duke Nukem 3D on the Master System because it is an 8-bit machine. Now, we're talking about a game that had to have compromises to get on to that generation of consoles. But yeah, it's like the Master System's support history is really weird because for as not good as it did here, it did apparently worse in Japan. To wit, like the last officially released game in Japan was Bomber Raid, the pretty average 1942 clone that Naka just did. The last North American Master System game was Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Master System. I'm not sure what the last Euro game was, but once again, they were getting ports of
Game Gear games.
Yeah, that's the other secret to Master System support. The Sega Game Gear, which was their handheld at the time, was pretty much a Master System in terms of technology. So maybe not a 1-to-1 conversion, especially with the kind of cartridges they used.
Yeah.
But it's still, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on, say, the Game Gear was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Master System. And honestly, if you could haggle it, it was probably better to get the Master System version of these games. Mainly because screen crunch was a thing. But yeah, it's like the Master System was an interesting forerunner to the big leagues that were the Sega Genesis. In terms of major games, well, their mascot was Alex Kidd, and Alex Kidd had a whole bunch of games. I got to admit that I do not like the Alex Kidd games all that much.
Yeah, Alex Kidd didn't really take off in the West.
Well, once again, it didn't take off here in North America. Europe? So here's the thing. The Master System had an encoded game. Master System 1 had a game called Snail Maze. The Master System 2 had Alex Kidd in Miracle World encoded in the actual console.
So that's what if you turn it on with nothing in, that it would play that, and the inserted games just interrupt the loading and load something else instead?
I think you might have had to insert a code, but that's basically the summation of things. It's why so many Europeans have fondness for Alex Kidd, because even if they didn't play any other game, they literally played that one. That was basically the pack-in title, literally. Once again, I've actually played most of the Alex Kidd titles. Thank you, GameTap.
Rest in peace, you crazy bastard.
I think the only one I didn't play was Alex Kidd in Shinobi World, which is unfortunate because, as I understand it, that's the best one. It's that damn Junken Pawn shit, like, that I hated.
Oh, apparently the last Master System game in Europe was Zool, Zool in '93.
I'm like, wouldn't be surprising. Zool was Gremlin Graphics' attempt at making a mascot, but that's another story for another day. I'm like, but yeah, Alex Kidd was the mascot for the Master System. He didn't do much. I mean, clearly, even Sega thought he sucked as a mascot because, they invented another one, and you kind of know who that is. As opposed to Alex Kidd, who, once he got supplanted by Sonic, kind of disappeared into the ether.
I think last time he was heard from was Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed.
You're probably not wrong. He's been regulated to, like, cameos in Sega things. Which I suppose gives him more life than other Sega mascots and IP, but still not great. Let's see, and then there was Zillion. This one was an interesting curio. It's because Sega commissioned Tatsunoko Productions to make an anime series out of it. And worth noting, Sega is actually in the anime game because they now own TMS. But we're talking like before that, and Sega's also been on production committees of other anime. Like they helped fund the Evangelion movies. But this was more Sega literally going to Tatsunoko, and they wanted to promote their not just the Master System, but the Photon light gun. That is the weapon that is used in the anime series, which is interesting because Zillion the game isn't a light gun game. It's an action platform. Make sense of that, if you will.
Cross promotion?
Basically. like the actual gun is in the series is the Photon light gun, which was the Sega light gun, which was the light gun used because back in those days you kind of had to have a light gun with your ensemble to be complete, because Duck Hunt was a phenomenon. That being said, what supported it? I'm trying to think. I'm struggling. Like the fact that I'm struggling to come up with games that use the Photon. I know there were games that used it, but there were like not a lot of them. I guess a game like Space Gun. I can't imagine why this thing never took off. I mean, light guns in general were just kind of gimmicky. Like, people remember Duck Hunt or Hogan's Alley. Like, they don't really remember anything beyond that. Like, maybe Wild Gunman. Like, there weren't too many light gun games for the NES either. Like, basically, the light gun was kind of a thing you had to have, but you didn't have to support much. Perhaps more interestingly, in terms of gimmicks, it had 3D glasses. That was another passing fad. In the late 80s, you had the red and blue fucking anaglyph light 3D glasses. I remember that more for Rad Racer than anything on the Master System. But there were things like Space Harrier 3D and Zaxxon 3D. There were attempts to do the 3D glasses. And they also cribbed Hudson's gimmick. That is to say, if you remember the DG16, The cartridges were called Hue cards. They were these credit card sized things, and the Master System also had that. The LP that Naka just uploaded, Ghost House, that's one of them. And it's also worth noting the Master System had some of the worst box art you will ever fucking see.
I hope you like the black grid lines on white backgrounds.
And if you don't, well,
too bad. That's what you're getting.
Pretty much.
In North America, it's seriously not good. And that's just like the base design. There were two flavors of terrible beyond the checkerboard, and that was either you got a picture of the game on the box, like the actual game, like the card games. They put the picture of the card on the box.
Mm-hmm.
And the picture of the card is still just the game logo on white with black grid lines with a little bit of art on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why is this?
It's like it's not even a good art to make.
Feature.
Like if your game had like really nice cover art or really nice game card art, that would be one thing. But this is just like, it's the equivalent of like what was that one game that it was a DS game? I think it was the 2 Castlevania games or something on the or something. That got re-released. And the re-release art was just literally a picture of the box for the original release, and then on a plain background with like the logo up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
God
Except
damn
this
it.
wasn't a re-release. This was the initial fucking release.
Yeah, and people wonder why the Master System didn't do well.
Yeah, or it's like Black Belt here, which has got a poorly drawn foot on the bottom.
Oh yeah, they had a knack for having what looked like the intern draw the box art.
Yeah. I'm like, they would get better at that, but we're talking by that point it was too late.
Yeah. Who would have thought box art might actually help push your product?
It's not like what people see when they're in the store trying to decide what game to purchase.
Like when you get to when Phantasy Star gets released over here, the box art's much better. But you're still dealing with that fucking checkerboard.
Yeah.
So like Sonic the Hedgehog. Ugh.
And by then the Master System was literally on its way out.
Yeah. Also worth noting was Nintendo's monopolistic tendencies. So
yeah, unfortunately, since this came out after the NES, they would have had a hard time getting any games that had been released on the NES on account of, Nintendo had an agreement that you signed when you put your game on the NES saying that you wouldn't put it on anything else.
So you would think, but Sega found a way around that, as did NEC. So what the contract stipulated is Company X could not release Game Y on any System Z except the NES. What that didn't preclude is Sega releasing that same game on the Master System, or NEC releasing that game on the TurboGrafx 16. That's why you get a shitload of games, like, for example, Roston. This game is owned by Taito, but it was reprogrammed by Sega. That means Sega did the actual conversion process themselves. They published it themselves. Bada bing, bada boom. That game is now on the Sega Master System. Once again, this wasn't exclusive to that. The TG16 had this all the time, like their version of R-Type that was converted by NEC. I think the Master System version was converted by Sega. like I said, this happened all the time. There were only two actual other publishers on that worked the Sega Master System in North America, and that were Activision and Parker Brothers. You might notice those two are both American publishers. Now in Europe, there were more companies that worked on the Master System. Once again, they were Western in origin, or by the time that particular game got released on the platform, that Nintendo's contract there had been voided.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because spoilers, a lot of governments were like, "Hey, wait a minute, that's monopoly. You can't do that." To
Well, yeah,
Nintendo.
it was literally part of the consent decree that they made with the Department of Justice in like 1991.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, that's another story. Now the Master System controllers, as far as I know, were pretty fucking terrible. They had these square bits of plastic that operated as a D-pad, and it's not, say, Atari 5200 levels of bad, but as I understand it, if you can use a Genesis controller to play Master System games, do so, and you could do that with the thing called power-based converter. Like, the Genesis had a lot of nifty and not so nifty add-ons, as its reputation goes. Most people know about the Sega CD and the 32X. You don't hear as much about the power-based converter, but this was a thing that allowed you to play Master System games.
Mm-hmm.
You
Well,
know?
it really was just an adapter to slide it into the cartridge slot easier. If you can
Right.
line it up right, you don't even need that.
Yeah, because I think that was the big problem in terms of like technology. It's like we talked about this a while ago. It's like if you have the actual technology of the system in your successor system, you can play the previous success. You can play that on that system.
Mm-hmm.
It's how Wii games are able to be played on the Wii U 100%.
And
Because they actually have the Wii guts in there.
And like older PS3s and stuff like that.
Right, because the Emotion engine was in the first generation of those.
Yep.
So, overall, the Master System was an interesting third step, if you will, into the console space for Sega. But it's like I think pretty much everybody will agree that the Genesis is when the Sega really hit it out of the park in terms of just about everything.
Mm-hmm. The Genesis when they came out swinging hard.
Yeah, and it's not just because of, say, Sonic. Thanks to the Genesis power of the time, their arcade conversions got pretty close there for a bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that was when Sega started doing things that Nintendo didn't.
Right. Their marketing, but that's a story for another day.
Mm-hmm.
Though that day was a while back, because obviously we've talked about the Genesis.
Oh yeah.
It's like, how could we not?
Yeah, seriously.
Anyway, so that will do it for this season of Fragments of Silicon. If you're new here, joining us tonight, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll be aware of our off-season streaming, and indeed when we come back.
We also have a link to our Discord down below.
Right.
If you want to hang out there. That is going to be getting a remodel kind of over the break, so look forward to it.
So yeah, that does tie into Season 11 plans. So we've been getting more and more requests about using the Discord for the show, and we're going to be looking into doing that. Not sure if we're going to be doing that for every interview, because once again, not everybody has Discord. Most people have fucking Skype, even if they don't use it for anything else but for industry stuff. we'll probably have to see about Kevin getting a get into the Discord then.
Yeah.
But that'll all be handled in the off season.
Yeah, and we also need to make sure yours works, because that was a big reason why we didn't use it.
Right. But it's like it's one of those. The time is coming where we should probably have better Discord integration.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be our big change going into season 11 that we can foresee. Currently, the other big change that's on the bubble is Petty Fan and his knee problems.
Yeah, there's a very good chance I could miss some shows. Like, I don't know how many. It depends on the procedure. There are some knee procedures I'm looking at. I could be up and around, within a week. There are some procedures I could literally be in the hospital itself for upwards of 3 weeks.
So if that comes to fruition, we're probably going to be looking for at least a temporary replacement to fill the fourth chair in the meantime. And either Galix or Twilight will take over streaming duties. We're just
I do have a new computer that theoretically should be able to do some of this, so.
Yeah, mind you, none of this is solidified yet because we don't know Petty Fan's status. This is just our contingency plans for the near future. But anyway, so that's what's coming up ahead.
Well, I guess
Petty,
we should. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I will allot this time for you to talk about what you want to do in terms of streaming during the break.
All right, the big thing the raids will still stay the same, the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday night stuff. But during the break, I'm going to see about streaming Persona 4, or not Persona 4, Persona 5, because I haven't had a chance to sit down and beat that yet. And with a week to the house to myself, why not? So what's probably going to happen with that is I'm going to be in the Discord, and any of the cast who wants to kind of roll by can just kind of jump in. So that's what's going to happen with, at least for next week. The week after, I might just stream on show nights, but it depends if I can find something else I want to stream if I don't beat Persona.
All right. So, yeah, that's our plans going forward. It's been a good season. It's our first one without Ogre. As far as him coming back, don't know. Maybe he'll be back for E3. It's like, but in the meantime, yeah. Hopefully he's doing well. Anyway, until next season, which will be the week of April 17th. We'll be starting out with the Sunday reviews there. But until then, we wish you good gaming.